As we're coming into fall here in Northwest Florida with our backyard food forest, we're going to start losing some of the beauty and some of the physical noticeable differences and successes of a garden. So I figured today would be a good time to walk through before everything starts dying off and looking kind of ugly. So we're just going to run through the backyard, show you what's worked this year, what hasn't worked. You can see the chickens right there making all sorts of noises. We have about like 150 different species of plants here in the backyard, a lot of which didn't work and a lot have worked. So let's take a quick walk through and talk about what has and hasn't worked. So step one would be discussing the most important feature in our backyard garden is the chickens. It is probably about a 150 square foot pen with about a 40 square foot coop. You can see we got some lovely chairs awkwardly positioned to keep the chickens from jumping out. This has been amazing. Deep wood chip mulch, deep litter mulch has created a lot of soil, given them a lot of scratch and stuff to do, a lot of bugs for them to eat. It's positioned under a Bradford pear for shade and protection. And then it's also positioned under a fig as well as black scoponon grapes. So during June, July, and some of August, we're able to feed chickens figs and grapes as passive feed. So that was a really big importance here in the garden. And, you know, other than the physical benefits of chickens, just the emotional benefits of just having them is really a good time. So definitely recommend the chickens in the permaculture backyard. As we begin phasing out of this property and moving on to our land, we have started bringing in some grass back into the property because someone that isn't in our family is going to be living here one day eventually, and they will have access to fruit trees that we've planted, but we're starting to phase this back into grass. So one of the things we did was we planted a small field of greens, and then we can every now and then graze the chickens through it, and they can have arugula, you know, and some mustard greens. And that's been kind of a cool test. It hasn't been perfect, but doesn't get the most light, but it's been pretty cool. So right here's our main guild. It's a Everbearing Mulberry guild. The Everbearing Mulberry was an extreme success for us and has been. This year was its first year fruiting. It's grown, I think, 7 or 8 feet this year after a hard prune, and we've successfully propagated 10 or so cuttings from the mulberry. So it's multiplied and it has provided food. So that's been amazing. One of the big things that's really taken over in the garden this year is the perilla. We planted one a while back and it is seeded and it is coming up everywhere. It's not necessarily one we love. The chickens don't really eat it. So that one's been a little interesting. One of the important ones we did this year was we planted a lot of sweet potatoes within the systems, and that's been pretty good. We've been pulling some out now towards the end of the season, and we're going to start harvesting some of those. So that's been good as well. A lot of flowers this year. One of the main things we did was plant little clusters of zinnias, and that has been amazing for the pollinators. As you can see, there's a butterfly in the background, as well as the hummingbirds, and those have been fun to watch. So this year we added salvia into the garden. Same thing, hummingbirds, butterflies. It's been really a good time. And this year has been a year for us to start diving into a small scale nursery for ourselves, not so much for the public. One of the things we've done is I have started about 100 loquat, and I've had a very good success. So we have a large amount of loquats that we're going to be moving here in the next hopefully few months as we begin transitioning to our new property. So from this angle behind me, you can see some echinacea. That has been an important one for us. My wife does a lot of like tinctures and stuff, and having a nice patch of echinacea this year has been good. This area doesn't get a lot of light, so it has grown quite well without that, and it doesn't receive a lot of water. We do have irrigation here in the back, but it's definitely relatively hardy. So that's been a good bonus for the garden this year. So back here you can see some of the sweet potatoes and a bunch of the loquat and mulberry cuttings that we have rooted or started from seed. We have one of the lovely pollinators flying around the yard right now. And then, you know, as with most permaculture food forest videos, everyone's always talking about their lemongrasses or their vetivers. Lemongrass is super important for us. We make tea out of it. It's, you know, the stereotypical chop and drop. We use it for the trees that we have planted, and it's been very, very good for us. We have had a good success with taro here in Northwest Florida, so give that a consideration if you're in a 8B kind of region. This is our pineapple guava. We've had some growth on it this year. It's definitely doing good. It's not doing bad. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. So I would recommend that one as well. But obviously zinnias and salvias for your pollinators, highly recommend. Here we got a kumquat tree. I personally hate them. My wife loves them, so we got them. It's grown amazing. It put on a ton of fruit for us last year. We planted sweet potatoes under it, garlic chives, society garlic, I should say, lemongrass, and it's been a nice little guild. One that hasn't really done great for us in the shade is the ginger lily. We had a buddy north of here who did amazing with the ginger lilies in the shade, but ours for some reason aren't really taking. So we'll figure something out for them. Here you can see, here's more of that self-seeded perilla. If you're a tea person, this is good for tea. Now another big success for us this year was the Pakistani mulberry. We didn't really get any mulberries on it the time that we planted it versus the time when it fruits was the timing wasn't right, but it's grown a ton. You can see it's fresh growth. It's grown, you know, 5 feet, maybe 4 feet. Another big win for us this year has been, excuse my finger, has been our sunshine mimosa, or I don't think it's called sunshine mimosa, but it's the ground cover, perennial ground cover, native ground cover here to Florida, the one where you touch it and the leaves close. That's been really good, nitrogen fixing. It's done really well for us. Big win for us always has been the yard long beans. This year we made the trellis much longer, and we have grown a ton of long beans. I mean, look at the size of these things. You know, a foot and a half, and they're just everywhere. So we can pickle them, we put them in stir fries, eat them raw. They're amazing. It wouldn't be a Northwest Florida garden if you didn't have Bidens popping up everywhere. I get it's medicinal, I get it's good for you, but it's not necessarily one you want just popping up everywhere in the garden. Right now we got loofahs. This is a good one, you know, make your scrubs for the shower or for your dishes. We do put rosemaries here in the garden a lot. They don't necessarily love the overhead watering that they receive, but they do all right. Over here we tried a little bit of an annual with an herb garden. We tried tomatoes. Tomatoes failed this year. Herbs did okay this year, but the honeysuckle, you know, that whole permaculture concept, trellising to shade and cool the house, that's kind of something we tried, and that did pretty good. We've talked about this before. We don't get bananas, but it's fun growing them. And we put them right here in our mulch pit that's right at the bottom of a downspout, so we can grow our own compost, and it's watered. The system gets watered by itself. It doesn't receive watering. On that note of watering, this year we added a sprinkler, and it pretty much covers the whole backyard. Maybe a couple times a week, once a week, we will do a little bit of watering, so it's been good. There's some really good zinnias. So yeah, the mint this year, we noticed it was really dying off, and then it made a huge surge back after we gave it a hard prune. So lesson learned, if your mint's not doing good, just prune it. And yeah, that's really it. I mean, we've had a ton of successes. I would say mulberries, lemongrasses, beans, sweet potatoes, zinnias, salvias, society garlic. Those are, if you're going to build a food forest here in 8B, I would recommend using those as your starters. Those are really great. Turmeric pops up all over the place now, which is awesome. Turmeric is really good in these types of gardens that are a little more shaded. You can see, got a lot of tree cover. So overall, really happy with how this year turned out. This isn't at its full bloom right now, but I figured we'd catch it here before we get into the cool season and everything's dead. So thanks.